The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he has a significant amount of evidence that the coronavirus came from a lab in Wuhan.
I can tell you that there is a significant amount of evidence that this came from that laboratory in Wuhan.
It's a little awkward. Not only does he not provide any of the significant amounts of evidence, but his words are also the opposite to the conclusion of the U.S. national intelligence. Since he was widely challenged on this, on May 6, Pompeo changed his words.
We don't have certainty about whether it began in the lab or whether it began someplace else.
A reporter questioned his contradictory statements on spot.
On Sunday, you said there's enormous evidence.
And he replied,
They're entirely consistent.
So then,
those statements can both be true. Those statements can both be true.
And when the reporter made further inquiries,
Your efforts to try and to spend your whole life trying to drive a little wedge between senior American officials.
to have a significant amount of evidence and not to have a certainty are entirely different stories. They are not consistent. It's obvious that he lied to say that the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. Why did he lie? I'm Dr. Qiao.
That our economy is the best it has ever been.
U.S. economic data has been the biggest bet for President Trump's re-election. When the pandemic hit the U.S., the last thing President Trump wanted was to see the economy getting crushed. His strategy was to tell Americans that the virus was not serious at all.
And the risk to the American people remains very low. We have it so well under control. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will.
It's not dangerous to take flights. It's not dangerous to go to rallies. There's no need to be afraid. Keep your normal life. The pandemic kept getting worse in the U.S. 2 months later, the U.S. became the world's #1 of the confirmed cases. President Trump's biggest worry came to reality.
Stock markets in the US have plummeted. It's been the worst week for equities since the financial crisis.
The stock market lost trillions of dollars, and the U.S. economy came to a hard stop. Someone needed to be held accountable. On March 16th, for the first time, President Trump called the virus the Chinese virus. Since then, senior officials of the administration started blaming China. Pompeo is one of the most vocal of them.
China covered up the outbreak in Wuhan. China could have prevented the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. There is a significant amount of evidence that this came from that laboratory in Wuhan.
Mike Pompeo became the top U.S. diplomat by becoming a loyal defender of President Trump. He has done some dirty work.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
Previously, in Iran, Ukraine, and DPRK, Pompeo served President Trump by playing hardballs and sticking to the Trumpian unilateralism to reject international cooperation, negotiation, and partnership. This time, Pompeo is trying to make the outbreak of pandemic in the U.S. sound like all China's fault. At a time of crisis, political agendas should not take the place of scientific conclusions. According to a model designed by Columbia University, if the U.S. had begun the lockdown 1 week earlier than it did in March, 36,000 fewer people would have died from the COVID-19. Politicizing the pandemic will do nothing but worsen the already grim situation. Pompeo accuses China of hiding key information on the early stage of the pandemic and playing down the coronavirus. For the moment, the Trump administration is still playing down the pandemic. There are more than 1.5 million confirmed cases in the US. The death toll in the US surpassed 90,000. What would you say is the best strategy for leaders to stay in office? They must put people's livelihood and well-being first and tell the truth.